Hey, everybody, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. And remember to check out our podcast on Saturday nights after the day's action.
So going back into the season right here, we talked last time. Which coaches do you think are on the hot seat going into this year?
Well, like I said, on the hot seat, like I said, I definitely think because this is something that's come up since we last spoke. Scott Frost at Nebraska. If there's too much to this recruiting, to these violations, he's definitely pretty much a dead man walking.
Yeah.
And Dino Babers at Syracuse, he had one good year, one really big year, but they were arguably the worst team in the country last year out of the Power Five. If they have another that year this year, he's definitely on the hot seat. And Herm Edwards has some trouble going on over at Arizona State too, so I could see him being on the hot seat if there's anything to that. And then what I don't really put him on the hot seat because I'm not as sour on him as a lot of other people are. But I do think that Jim Harbaugh needs to do something this year, or else he definitely will be on the hot seat, as in he goes into next year needing to do something in order to avoid being fired. I think this is the year that sets him up to be fired if he doesn't either beat Ohio State or beat Penn State, who beats Ohio State, and that way he ends up winning the Big Ten, or something along those lines. He has to win the Big Ten, win that division, or come very close, and they need to finish in the top 10. I think if they don't finish in the top 10, like I say, I'm not going to say that he gets fired this year, but I think that he'll definitely be on the and he might just resign. He might. I mean, it might be a situation where he sees the writing on the wall and just decides to quit on his own.
So, that speaking of that division over there in the Big Ten, that's got to be one of the toughest divisions in football. You got Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, all in one.
Well, you see, and that's the reason why I'm not as down on him as a lot of other people seem to be, because yes, he hasn't beaten Ohio State, but it's like you said, that is arguably the toughest neighborhood in college football between it and the SEC West. So I look at Harbaugh as, I kind of look at Harbaugh as the same way that we looked at Les Miles when he continuously falling behind Alabama. It had to reach a point to where it wasn't just falling behind Alabama, but also falling behind the other schools. And Harbaugh, I don't think he's gotten to that point. But if this year he has to, like I said, this year he has to be better than Penn State, because it's one thing to be behind Ohio State, it's another thing to be behind both Ohio State and Penn State. With Michigan State, even though you're still ahead of them, Michigan State's been to the playoffs. Michigan hasn't.
That's true.
So like I said, it's you. I don't look at Harbaugh having a terrible record against Ohio State as being the killer. I think the killer is being, how do you compare against the rest of the schools, and are you making up that gap with Ohio State? So like I said, this is the year that I think he has to answer a lot of those questions. Like I said, are you getting closer to Ohio State, or are you falling behind Penn State, Michigan State? Because you can make the argument, even though it's a different division, you can make the argument that Wisconsin has already passed them as the number 2 Big Ten team. So, that's the thing. You could, if Wisconsin wasn't already ahead of you, you could make the argument that, well, we're still, even though we're in the same division with Ohio State, we're still the number 2 Big Ten team, and it's just they beat us, so we can't get ahead of them. But like I said, if you're behind Wisconsin, you're behind Penn State, Michigan State. Like I said, you may be ahead of them, but they got that playoff berth and you don't. Even though I think they ended up getting blown out by Clemson in that playoff game, or whoever it was that they played.
Michigan State, Alabama blew them out.
Was that Alabama?
Yeah, it was 31-0.
Yeah. So, like I said, you're really losing the ground. So, like I said, I'm not as sour on Harbaugh as others, but I say he's on the edge of he's right on the edge to getting on the hot seat.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think that state's really warming up. What about the SEC? I mean, is it time for Kirby and Jimbo and Mullen to make some moves?
I really don't see it because Auburn made a change, Tennessee made a change, South Carolina made their change. I really don't see anybody in the SEC. Kirby, depending if Kirby doesn't win it this year, I don't think that it's a hot seat situation. More than it's a situation of are we just in the Mark Richt range, or are we just having another Mark Richt situation again? Like I said, I've always brought up that Mark Richt, if you compare, it was a different environment, but Mark Richt's first three or four seasons is no different from Kirby's first 3 or 4 seasons.
I did a compare and contrast on that. When you put the record, I think Rick actually had a better first 5 or 6 seasons. I mean, Kirby did get, that's for the playoffs, but Rick won 2 SEC titles. Kirby's just got that one.
If you take it out to 2007, if through 2007, if you had a 4-team playoff in place, Mark Richt would have had 2 playoff berths.
Oh yeah, easy.
So, like I said, if Kirby doesn't win it this year, because this is his best opportunity, because he's got to. I would say, I mean, I know everybody is expecting, which I really don't understand how everybody is just proclaiming Alabama to be the number 1 team, even with a brand new starting quarterback who hasn't had any action at all. But
not only that, you're running back. I said, not only that, you got new running backs. You lost 3 starters on the offensive line. You lost Waddle, Smith. You got a brand new thing there.
Yeah, you see, honestly, I guess I know why it is, because they didn't finish they were number 8 or 9 last year. They finished 8 or 9 or 6 or around that range last year. But I don't. To me, I'm a Georgia Tech fan, so I hate saying this. UGA is the number 1 team to me. When you look at if the quarterback position is that important, out of the top teams, who has a better quarterback situation than Georgia outside of Clemson? But even Clemson, okay, they have a quarterback who had some action last year, but he still lost the biggest game that he played last year.
Oh, I agree.
It was through no fault of his own, but he still lost it. Georgia, you got a quarterback who's got he comes from USC, so he has that pressure cooker behind him. And if I remember right, didn't JT Daniels finish undefeated last year?
Yes, he did. I think yes. As far as if I remember right, he did.
Yeah, and that includes a bit. I mean, say what you want about Cincinnati, that was a top 10 team.
Yeah, if he can't, I mean, of course, I still believe that first time too, when we had the game in the Georgia Dome, we got a 2-touchdown lead over Alabama. I mean, it's almost a home field. I mean, God, how can you not close that thing out? I don't know if he's ever going to do it.
Well, and like I said, I don't think that it's a hot seat situation, but I do think that if they don't win it this year, it's a situation where you start. Well, like I said, we already know how Mark Richt ended up. Right. So the situation where you can easily look at it and say, okay, or do we have another Mark Richt situation? And that, I guess, maybe if you're Georgia, do you say that's it, or do you say we'll just ride it out and see what happens? Because he could be a Bobby Bowden type. I mean, how long did it take Bobby Bowden to win a national championship?
16, 17 years.
Yeah, so like I said, it might just be that kind of a situation, but I don't think it's anything close to a hot seat in reality.
You made a good point. I mean, because I know eventually somebody's got to beat Alabama, but that's no, but not many people's doing it. I mean, most people are getting blown out. I mean, they're just on such a different level. I think that was what was kind of frustrating with had to be with Auburn fans is the fact that Malzahn was 3-5 against Saban, but then loses games to
other. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how do you lose? I mean, some teams in the SEC ain't even beat him 3 times, and Malzahn beat him. Was 3-5 against him, and you finished 6-4 with those records.
How about Gus Malzahn? The 2017 as the two national championship teams. He beat them both.
Yeah,
and doesn't even get a SEC title out of it.
No, he didn't. He beat. I mean, in those 2 games when he beat Alabama and Auburn, beat Alabama and Georgia, they looked as good as anybody in the nation. I mean, they beat them, and it wasn't just slipping by. And I was looking at something because he played Alabama, went Georgia, Alabama, Georgia, and there's no doubt in my mind if he'd beat Georgia, they'd have moved up to number 1. So you talk about if they would have beat them, their last 4 games would have been Georgia, Alabama, Georgia, Alabama.
Yeah.
Oh God, how does it get any worse than that?
About that because I'm not sure if they would have. Because were they the number 1 seed that year, or were they the number 2?
They went up to number 2, and my argument was I think they were. I think Clemson was undefeated, but if you just beat Georgia, Alabama, Georgia, I think they would have jumped Clemson to be number 1.
Well, remember they had 2 losses too.
Well, I think they had the second loss after. Yeah, you're right. They did have 2 losses. I think Clemson had 1 then, so I'd have to go back and look at it because they were
that might have been the year that Clemson, because that wasn't the Trevor Lawrence year, right? Because Trevor Lawrence won as a freshman.
No, it wasn't the Trevor Lawrence year. That was year Alabama beat them 24-6.
Clemson had a loss because Clemson lost to it was either Syracuse or Pitt. That was the year that they lost to either Syracuse.
Syracuse on a Friday night game.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yes, because I remember coming home and watching that game.
I think UGA ended up being the number 1 seed, but I don't, and that's how. No, they didn't.
Well, yeah, because that one was number 4.
Clemson was number 1, UGA was number 2, and Oklahoma was number 3. So if Auburn beats UGA, I think they probably still slot into that 2-3 game against Oklahoma. It's probably just Oklahoma is 2 and Auburn is 3 because, like I said, they still had a second loss.
That's true. That's true.
But 9 times out of 10 in that scenario, they probably also still. It's not. They don't play Alabama right away, but they probably still do end up in a rematch with Alabama because the championship game is probably still going to be SEC against SEC.
Yeah, and that was a championship game with Alabama and Auburn. That got me thinking about the schedule. Do you remember back when Auburn used to play what Pat and I called Amen Corner, and it was Florida, Georgia, and Alabama to close out the season?
Yeah.
And that was before Florida got good too.
Well, yeah, but remember that was back in the days where you could pretty much there was a little bit of uniformity to the schedules, but you still had a little bit more free reign in the schedules than what you have now. Because that was back when I think back then you could still, because that was before the SEC championship game.
Yeah,
that was when you could still not even play certain teams in the SEC just because you didn't feel like playing them.
Yeah, back then they only scheduled 6 SEC games.
Mm-hmm.
You had 5 non-conference games back then. And Bryant used to schedule a 7th SEC game, so it would almost guarantee him an SEC championship every year.
Mm-hmm.
All the teams played 6. So that Helton at USC, what about him? You think he's on the hot seat?
Oh, Helton's already gone.
Oh God. Oh God, how did I miss that?
You know what? I remember right when we last spoke. That was an example of just how far Tennessee has fallen off the radar. Is that when I was trying to remember, I couldn't think about the fact that Helton was gone. Well, I knew that Helton was gone, but I couldn't remember who had actually been hired to replace him. It's Heupel with from UCF.
No. I'm talking about USC.
I'm sorry. What? I don't know why I'm thinking about him. Helton at USC. Yeah, that's another one where That's another one where although I'm less confident about him, if that's a way to say it, than Harbaugh. I'm not as far down on him as other people are, but I do think if he doesn't have a big year this year, they probably will fire him, and they probably would be justified to do so because he has everything lined up that he should be the team to beat in the Pac-12 this year, and it should have been last year, but they just can't put it all together. If they don't win the Pac-12 this year, I think he's gone because for all the talk that people do about being tired of seeing Alabama and Clemson and Oklahoma and Ohio State in the playoff every year, it's not Alabama and Clemson, and it's not their fault, and it's not the fault of a 4-team playoff. It's the fact that you have USC and Texas and Michigan not doing their part. They're not, and USC needs to be a perennial playoff contender. And if Helton doesn't have a big year, I think, like I said, I think he's done a good job at USC. By any, if you put his records and his accolades at USC over at UCLA, and in all honesty, I don't think it would be that difficult to make that swap. They're building a statue to him. You talk about a Rose Bowl appearance, a Cotton Bowl appearance. He's done a good job, but it's not USC. It's not USC good, and that's all. I think that's the reason why I thought that we were talking about the Tennessee coach is because he has he's a Southern guy, and I don't think he fits in with that West Coast style.
Right.
So, yeah, if he doesn't have a big year, he's more on the hot seat than I think Harbaugh is. Like I said, I think USC would be more justified to fire him than Michigan would be if Harbaugh has. Like I said, last year was a disaster. But last year was also a completely unprecedented situation. So I don't even think I think people are, but I don't think you should use last year as a real good example of where Michigan is. But by that same token, is USC as good as what they showed last year?
Yeah, last year was just so hard to gauge in so many ways. Because that brings me to a coach I was asked about Orgeron at LSU. I mean, what happens if he has another 3-8 or 3-9? I mean, they're gonna forget about that national championship real quick.
Actually, it's funny. The video that I was watching with Feinbaum, he came to the exact opposite conclusion. He said he seems to think that Orgeron is safe. I'll be honest with you. I agree 100% with what I think you're going with on this one. If Orgeron has a bad year, it wouldn't happen because I don't think he's on the hot seat at all. But more than Helton at USC and more than Harbaugh at Michigan, if Orgeron were to have a not great, you figure at LSU, if you can't beat Bama, you should at least be finishing 9-3, 8-4. Maybe you split with Auburn, and you split with Texas A&M. You should be at LSU year in and year out should be no worse than 9-3, 8-4.
Yeah,
that's my opinion. If Orgeron doesn't get to that 9-3, 8-4 level this year, that just proves that as I really do think, he's nothing more than Gene Chizik with a Cajun accent.
Good analogy.
So like that one to me, if I were the AD at Michigan, AD at USC, AD at LSU, I'm looking if out of those three, if I'm the AD at LSU, I'm the one that's actually looking more at my head coach as being more suspect than the other two would be. But he's getting a pass. It's like he's getting a pass because they won that title. But like I said, he's Gene Chizik with an accent.
Because Chizik, the year after they won the national championship, they went 8-5, and the next year's when the bottom fell out.
Yeah.
Last year the bottom just totally fell out on LSU. I mean, they got beat by Auburn 48-11. I mean, 55-17 Alabama. They got blew out by Mississippi State opening game. He may get a pass. And then the next year, but you think when we first
he's going to get that title winning pass. But like I said, to me, he doesn't deserve it because let's just break it down. If let's take their accolades out of it. If you just had to say, if you were let's just say hypothetically, you were starting a college football program and you had to choose the coaches out of the SEC West to be your head coach. How many coaches do you go through before you pick Ed Orgeron right now?
Oh, he would be my last choice. I mean, even the guy, I can't think of the guy's name at Arkansas, and even Haskins at Auburn, he would be the last choice on my list.
Well, like I said, if we Pittman had a pretty matter of fact, did they beat LSU last year? Or did they?
No, I think they beat LSU.
Yeah, so like I said, Saban is definite. I would say that Jimbo's above him.
Oh, yes.
I would take Lane Kiffin above him.
Oh, any day.
Mike Leach is crazy, but you take him over Orgeron.
I don't see anybody in the SEC West I'd take over, or I would put Orgeron above.
You have to Brian Harsin has to prove that he can actually do it at that level, at the SEC level. And like you said, Pittman, he had a decent first year, has to show that he has some longevity, but you probably would. You maybe do pick both of them above Ed Orgeron. That's why, like I said, if I'm LSU, I'm really suspicious of whether or not Ed Orgeron is really that guy. But like I said, it's the exact same situation with Chizik. Defensive head coach comes in, runs that side of the ball, brings in an offensive mastermind. Offensive mastermind does what he's supposed to do on that side of the ball, bolts after the year, goes somewhere else, has a little bit of success somewhere else. So that makes it clear to you that the offensive mastermind really was that good. And then you kind of struggle a little bit without that offensive mastermind. So like I said, unless Gene Chizik can guarantee you that he's going to go out and hire another Joe Brady, going to find another Joe Brady hiding under a rock, he's not a good coach.
I agree. I mean, his whole career, I think about the first year when he got the job full time, they lost to Troy and they called him into the office of the coordinators and he almost got fired that year. Speaking of coaches, Auburn's new coach, do you think he's going to make it in the SEC? I mean, bringing a guy from Boise State down here to coach in the Deep South and without a Southern accent, because Auburn's still kind of a good old boy school. I mean, you got to go down there and talk the talk and chum around with those guys.
That I would have liked to have seen him go to one of the big state schools, like a Florida, Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, one of those type schools, because it's like you said, it's at this, let's call them the secondary schools. There's kind of a different angle to those schools. Like Auburn is they like to call it the cow college. It's that kind of a school as opposed to the more metropolitan type environment that you will have at the big state school.
Right.
So I do wonder about that, but ultimately the only thing that really matters are wins and losses. And looking at what he did at Boise, if he can translate that to that type, that obviously it's not going to be the same, but if he can come reasonably close to that at Auburn, he may do it. The only thing that I worry about with him is that when you look at the Boise State head coaches, and this is kind of odd because you can't really say any. Ever since Dan Hawkins was there, or I think was it Dan? Yeah, ever since Dan Hawkins, ever since Houston Nutt was there, they've not had nobody has done poorly at Boise State.
Right.
But there was a drop off from where Chris Peterson had them to where Harsin had them.
Right.
Now, part of that was tougher competition. San Diego State got better. Colorado State had a couple of years. Wyoming got better. Competition breeds. You're obviously when the teams around you start playing better, your record is going to go down a little bit. But it is the fact that Chris Peterson had them all the way up here, and Harsin had them just a little bit lower. So, is that all on him, or was that just circumstance, or I don't know. But he's a good coach. Is he good enough to win at Auburn? I don't know.
One thing he's going to have to do is that I've heard and listened. He's going to have to get some assistance with ties to the SEC, because that's so important when it comes to recruiting down here in the South. You can't bring a bunch of West Coast guys down here and walk into these Southern homes and recruit these kids.
Does he not?
From what I've heard, he brought his whole staff. He does not have one coach with any ties to the SEC. And I have to go back and double check, but that's big right there, man. You're going to have some ties to go down here. Some Southern, I mean, just the relationships you make with high school football coaches down here is going to be so important for his successor.
I wonder if this isn't part of the thinking with his hire. He has Texas ties.
Yeah.
No, Texas A&M is already here. And Texas is on the way. Maybe they're banking on his Texas ties compensating a little bit for his lack of Southern ties.
That could be it. That's a lot to put in though, because Auburn's usually do so well recruiting out of Georgia and Florida, because they're right there on the border with Georgia. And God, there's so many good football players coming out of Georgia every year. They get out of LaGrange and Columbus and. But there's so many coming out of Texas too. God.
I mean, it's like I said, I would like to think that I haven't studied the staff all that well. I would like to think that he should have brought in at least somebody with Southern ties. I'm going to look it up right now just to.
Yeah, look it up, because I could be totally wrong on that and missed it. That is so important. You got to have somebody with
some ties down there. Just because if you look at it, and I realize that some people are already entrenched at where they are, Auburn itself has a lot of good recruiters that have been known for recruiting. Auburn as a school has produced a lot of top-notch recruiters.
Oh yeah.
Who was the guy who used to be at Georgia that was a big-time recruiter that came from Auburn?
Oh God, I can't think of that guy's name now.
Well, I did not realize that Demetrius Robertson transferred to Auburn.
Oh, I didn't know that either. I must have missed that. Yeah, I did miss that.
Yeah, he's listed on their roster as a senior. I guess he went there for his senior year.
Huh.
Oh, they got Derek Mason.
Okay. All right. I didn't realize they had Mason.
They got Derek Mason, Mike Bobo.
Oh, Mike Bobo's at Auburn?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I totally missed that then. I don't know.
The Cadillac.
Oh,
They got Cadillac as the running back coach.
well, dang, I totally stuck my foot in my mouth on that, didn't I?
Yeah. Well, now, like I said, now, Derek Mason, he was the head coach. So how much
Yeah.
hands-on recruiting has he done? And Mike Bobo spent the last how many years in Colorado? He ain't been down in Georgia or down in the South too often over the last couple of years. So, and like I said,
Yeah.
I'm not seeing too many names that I readily recognize as being like experienced Southern recruiters. Like guys who've been working in the SEC for the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, right. Bobo's been out there, Colorado State, and Mason. I don't really know how much hands-on recruiting he was actually doing, but that's still not a bad name to have on your staff. Is
Oh
Derek
no,
Mason, and of course
yeah,
Cadillac. It's not going to hurt you either.
no, and they got another guy from the 2010 team, Zach Etheridge. He comes over from Houston. Houston's kind of in the South.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, that's a good. There's a lot of quality football players coming out of Houston. That's a team that there's a okay. So it's not as bad as well. Somehow I thought that all his coaches came from Boise State or came from the West Coast. So that
No,
was
I'm looking at them. I don't think there's a lot of people from. I don't think he brought because they hired his I think it's the offensive coordinator. They hired the offensive coordinator. It might have been the defensive coordinator. They hired them to replace him up at Boise. I think a lot of them might have just stayed up there with him.
that could be it.
They got the strength coach from Boise. The strength coach comes from Boise. Yeah, this offensive line coach. He was at Tennessee. I don't know how much of a recommendation that is that he spent the last 3 years at Tennessee working for God,
Pruitt.
yeah, but offensive line coach comes from Tennessee. Tight ends coach comes from Boise. Yeah, so it looks like a little decent mix, but not you. I think you weren't too far off. I mean, it's not for a first year head coach. You would think he would want a little bit more. I would say if for a first year head coach, you want to have some experience, and maybe Derek Mason is that. But even before Derek Mason went to Vanderbilt, he was at Stanford. So,
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
like I said, I would say maybe Derek Mason is that, but you would definitely want to have more of a established Southern feeling. And, like I said, you got Cadillac, but Cadillac's a first year coach. Oh, this is his third. So he was actually there under Malzahn.
Yeah, I thought he was there last year up under him. I mean, it's not well. It's still as bad as what I thought it was, but that's still not some. I mean, with Mason, I don't know. I forgot he's at Stanford, but that's still not as. Probably, like you said, it's probably still not what you want, but
Yeah. Now this is the one position that I do think he did bring from Boise that I would like to have. This is just me saying this. I would like to have seen him bring in somebody from a with a Southern school is his chief of staff. I guess that's going to be kind of like his GM type figure, the guy who handles all the stuff, all the off field stuff, the recruiting and everything. That he did bring him from Boise, so I get it's yeah, it can go either way. Yeah.
I mean, time will tell. I seen where they're putting in a kind of more of an old school offense. We're going to run downhill, and I'm wondering how that's going to translate in the SEC now, especially with the offenses have changed so much because it's not the SEC of 5 or 10 years ago.
Who's that?
God, I can't pronounce his name. Hart.
Well, he's got Bobo as his offensive coordinator. So if you saw the University of Georgia, all those years under Mark Richt. That's what that's what Auburn fans are going to be getting. That can go either way because Auburn's going to have a fullback now.
Yeah, he's going back to the I formation, which surprised me when I read that. I was like, man, he's going back to the I. I mean, what Miles was the last coach to do that, right?
Well, yeah, like I said, Kirby kept the fullback for a little bit while he was at Georgia, and yeah, because Georgia was really the only big time school that I really know of that actually used a fullback.
Yeah, yeah, they were.
So we're gonna see. Like I said, he's got an interesting staff. I'm not sure that it's got names on it, but the names have enough. The names are iffy enough that it's hit or miss. So like I said, Derek Mason, he's a good defensive coordinator, but like I said, is he a good fit for Auburn? Bobo. Of course, Auburn and Georgia have that whole thing where they like to swap. They like to send their coaches over to the other rival.
Mm-hmm.
Is Bobo going to be a good fit? Because, like I said, unless he's changed a bit, we know what his offense looks like. If you've seen Georgia from the year 2008 to 2017, so 2015 or so. So
you said Mason. That triggered a memory of mine. You remember when I think it was Mullen's first year, Vanderbilt or Florida was playing at Vanderbilt. Fight happened or something, and this crazy stuff Mullen does, I don't get. But he walks on the field and is looking over there at Mason, has his chest all bowed up like this, and is staring at him. And I started thinking, man, you don't want any part of that, okay? You better take your little moon face self back over there and get behind your players because you don't want any part of that guy.
I remember, I remember seeing that, and I can't, wasn't there like it's Vanderbilt. I mean, it was Vanderbilt in Florida, but wasn't there like a fight or something that was going on?
There was a fight that took place, and they were separating the players, and both of them kind of walked down the field, and Mullen just walks out there and just bows up and staring at Mason. I was like, man, you better get your behind those players. You don't want any part of that right there. That guy's going to destroy you.
Yeah, you're right. Mullen he's a character. I mean, I do think that he's probably the second best coach out of in the SEC, second or third best coach in the SEC, but he's a bit of a head case.
Boy, you said that'd be hard for me to sit there and try to rank. I mean, besides Saban, you got Mullen, you got Jimbo.
Honestly, if you had to ask me, I would put Jimbo. Well, no, actually, you know what? Even though I hate to do it, I'm going to rank Jimbo as number 2, just because he does have a championship. Even though I hate using that. I hate using that type of logic, but the 2 other coaches that I'm thinking about putting above him, it really isn't fair to put them above him, considering that he has a championship, and that would be Mullen and Kiffin.
Yeah, I think that Kiffin is definitely evolving into a good head coach, and he's still young enough that he's going to land that job again. That job where he can go to the next level and win a championship out.
Well, this will be the 3rd time I brought it up. When Saban retires, he's my my choice.
What's out there? I kind of agree with you. I'll probably take Kiffin because the big thing is he's matured. He's not like he was when he was 31, 32 years old. The game, he got those jobs too early.
You get a coach like that who he has the coaching chops, but then he's failed.
Yeah,
failed, and he's like, people keep on talking about who's going to be the first assistant to beat Saban. I would bet it's going to be Lane Kiffin.
I mean, I don't doubt it. I mean, because what he did to them last year with that team that should have never been on the field with Alabama. I mean, I mean, he gave them fits. I mean, I didn't. I was like, God, quit scoring so fast, Alabama, giving them the ball right back. I was like, kneel down once or something, burn some clock. And I didn't think they was ever going to get out of that game.
Yeah, like I said, he's got, and that's honestly, that's another reason why if I'm LSU, I'm looking over at Ed Orgeron a little bit more harshly than I think people are really giving him credit for, because if you let Lane X's and O's wise, Lane Kiffin is a better coach than Ed Orgeron.
Oh, God, yeah.
Can Ed Orgeron maintain that program to be better than whatever Lane Kiffin does with that Ole Miss program? Because if you let Lane Kiffin actually build some inroads and actually start building something at Ole Miss, because remember, it's matter. I think we've talked about this before. His biggest, and obviously you're going to do that because you're a California kid, and USC is probably your dream job. That's where you came from. So, but if he had stayed at Tennessee and he had actually worked to build something at Tennessee, we might not be talking about Lane. We might not be talking about Nick Saban having as many titles as he's got, because if you got a Tennessee that's on your schedule every year, that's okay. Maybe they're not Bama good, but they're Auburn good. Like you said, how many times did Gus Malzahn beat him 3 times?
Yeah.
Who's to say Lane Kiffin couldn't get him another 3 or 4 times?
Yeah, I mean, that's true, because Tennessee was not that far down then.
Exactly.
It wouldn't have taken much. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, because I mean, he could have been there and did that. And talking about building those inroads, I mean, that wouldn't be too big of a move either, to go right down to Baton Rouge. They may have it. I mean, that may very well have his eye on Kiffin. I mean, I know somebody's going to. I mean, he's what, 44, 45?
Yeah, he's still very young.
Yeah, I mean, very young.
And like we're sitting up here saying this, if Helton gets fired, he might go. I just described. I just said that was his dream job. It might still be his dream job.
I think he would I think he'd go back to USC. I mean, because God, they were on probation then, and he was young.
He got screwed at USC, and I think USC probably, and this is why I think that their fans are probably so hard on Helton, is I think that that USC probably learned the wrong lesson from the Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian experience, where they were too quick. They were maybe too quick to get rid of Kiffin, and then Sark had his own little issues. So now they're sticking with Helton probably longer than what they than their fans are thinking that they're sticking with Helton longer than what they probably should.
Now you mentioned him. What do you think of Sark as a hire? I mean, he's got the experience of being at Washington, USC. Now he's got another, premier job at Texas.
That anything that the University of Texas does, I look at it, I give it a slight eye, because they shouldn't have fired Charlie Strong. They shouldn't have fired Tom Herman. And now you're hiring. I haven't seen enough. Sark, to me, needed to do what Kiffin did. He needed to go down. He needed to build up some more. He needed to build up some more gravitas, if you will. He needed to build up some more of he needed to go down a level to show, okay, he can actually build a program. He can actually win at this lower level. now I'm going to trust him with my bigger program. And even Kiffin, I mean, Ole Miss is a big program, but Ole Miss ain't Texas.
Oh no, not at all.
So, like I said, you're looking at Sark, and like I said, maybe you give him, because he was at Alabama for what, 2 or 3 years, 3 or 4 years.
Let's see. I think he was there. Let's see, two or three, something like that.
It's only been 2 or 3 because I don't even think it's been 3. I think it might have just been 2 years.
It's just been 2 because the guy who's at Maryland now, I can't think of his name. He was the offensive coordinator 2 his first years. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so yes. He was only the offensive coordinator for Tua's last year and Mac Jones' a year.
Yeah, that's it.
Because I remember because it's only been about 4 years since the Falcons lost the Super Bowl, and he was the offensive coordinator after the Falcons lost the Super Bowl. He was an offensive coordinator for the Falcons after the Super Bowl because he replaced Shanahan.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at it. So he's got 2 years, and there's no argument against the results of those 2 years. I mean, those are amazing results that he did over those 2 years. But that's basically 2 years as a coordinator at Alabama.
You get the Texas job.
Everything that happened before then, he got run out of. I mean, it was a little bit unfair, but I'm a Falcons fan, and I can say he got run out of Atlanta, where, as unfair as it was to him to have gotten run out, it wasn't uncalled for. So he got run out of Atlanta, and then before that, he had the little stint as a coordinator or he did whatever he did at Bama.
Well, he was an analyst. They let Kiffin go, and they brought him down to call the plays in the national championship game, and didn't work out. And him and Saban were screaming at each other in the locker room.
Because he didn't even serve as a coordinator that first go around at Bama. He was just there for that one game.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole season, but he was just the coordinator for that one game. So you take that, and then before then, he's what? That's when he got fired at USC. So there's not really too much meat on that resume. I mean, matter of fact, if you compare him to Kiffin, Texas might have been better off hiring Lane Kiffin.
Oh yeah, all day. Because if I remember right, at Washington, he was an 8-4 coach there those few seasons.
Yeah, because I mean they were decent at Washington, but there was a big jump in their performance under Peters. If I was Texas, I would say, hey, Scott what I forget his name, Peterson, you want to come out of retirement? But yeah, there was a big jump in performance from his at Washington after he left and Peterson came in, and then USC. There was a big he didn't do anything at USC that was great. I mean, he wasn't on his way to any greatness at USC that I recall. I mean, even though he didn't get fired for his on the field performance.
No, they were not going for no greatness. Yeah, so you're right. They was not, headed for no greatness.
Yeah, I don't remember his USC teams being all that special. But like I said, it may work out because maybe, like I said, whatever happens to you when you go through that Nick Saban car wash, you come out a different coach. So maybe it might be lightning in a bottle, but just resume wise, that is actually a pretty sketchy hire the more that you think about it.
Oh, I thought it was, when I first heard about it, I thought it was a sketchy hire. Like, man, you're giving the keys to the kingdom of Texas to this guy? I would.
But you know what? It's just so Texas, because, like I said, was Charlie Strong doing great there? No, but Charlie, I mean, he was only there for what, 2 years, 3 years, maybe.
I think Charlie was there 3 years, but they never really got. 3 years is not really enough time to turn that program around.
I mean, Mac Brown is a great coach. And Mac Brown, I would never say anything bad about Mac Brown as a coach, but the end of that tenure, they were not Texas anymore.
No, not at all.
It's going to require a rebuilding, and like I said, you cut off Charlie Strong before he had a chance to rebuild it. Right? You cut off Tom Herman, and to me, I don't even, the Tom Herman firing didn't make any sense to me.
No, not at all.
What did the guy really do wrong? When you accept the fact that you're still Texas and Michigan, Texas is where Michigan, Texas is right now where Michigan was right before they hired Jim Harbaugh. Now, except.
Sorry, I had a phone call. Come in.
Texas is where Michigan was, where, okay, maybe Rich Rodriguez wasn't a great hire for Michigan, but you have to see the whole thing through when you're having that kind of a transition. And by cutting it off before you saw the thing through, you simply set it up so that the next coach was bound to fail, and that's exactly what happened with Brady Hoke. Now, again, Brady Hoke maybe isn't as good of a coach as Tom Herman, but like I said, Tom Herman was set up for failure because you sabotaged the rebuild that was going on before Tom Herman came in there, and you're just expecting him to pick up and just, okay, well, Charlie Strong started off a pretty good job of rebuilding things, so you just finished the deal, but they're totally different coaches and they have totally different philosophies. So you're not taking a pretty good rebuild and just building off of it. You're taking a pretty good rebuild, cutting it off, and now you're starting a whole new rebuild. And like I said, it's like I said, I hope Sarkisian does good. I hope every coach does good. And Texas, I have no reason to want to see them fail. So I hope that he does all right. But that move just, I'm not optimistic about it.
Well, one word I'd like to use with stability. You've got to have stability. You can't go changing coaches every 2 or 3 years.
No, you can't. And that's what bothers me with these schools like Texas, like Michigan, that have enough money that they can do that, because it ain't nothing for them to rip up a contract and pay you $100 million and tell you to go away.
Right.
They can do that, but it's like you said, it's not healthy and it doesn't do good for your program.
You've got to let them take roots. I mean, and build those relationships and get those players in there. And then once you get that pipeline going, but changing every 2 or 3 years, there's no way you can do it.
And like I said, I don't think that these people that are making these decisions actually understand that, because I liken them to little kids that play Madden and they play the franchise mode on Madden, or they play old NCAA football games and you play the old dynasty mode on the NCAA football. It's just nothing to go to another school and just, you get your 100 recruiting points, and now you just spend those recruiting points the way that you can, and just because but no, in the real world, like the Athletic, I don't know if you're familiar with that website. The Athletic is doing a really good series talking about recruiting in a lot of these states, like these states that have multiple big time programs, and they're talking to the high school coaches in these states, and they're asking them, how is it with, how would you describe your relationship with this coach versus that coach or whatever? And a lot of these coaches are telling them, this new coach that's come in, we don't have the same kind of relationship with him that we had with the guy that just got fired.
Yeah.
And it goes the other way, but I don't think that the people that are doing the hiring and the firing realize that matters, because
it matters a lot.
A lot of times your coaches that you have at this school are doing a lot of the recruiting, but also a lot of the recruiting is done by these high school coaches saying, well, you know what? Little Jimmy here, he wants to go to a school, and if nobody's coming from your school to talk to him, I'm not going to send you anybody. I'm not going to have my guys talk to your guys. If you're not actually, if you're only coming to look at this star player that we've had, and you haven't come to our school in the last 5-6 years when we didn't have this one big star, I'm going to tell that one big star, hey, you know what? This school really is, this school really might not be for you. There might not be these guys might not be that good. It's about relationships, and you got to have those relationships.
You got to. I mean, you got to have those relationships with those high school coaches. I mean, that is so. I mean, God, that's so important. So, I'm trying to think of the guy. South Carolina. Who did they hire again? What's his? God, why is that slipping me?
Shane Beamer.
Shane Beamer. Oh, God, I could not. I was just reading it last night, and I could not call his name out again today. What do you think about that hire?
I like it. The only thing that I don't like about it is that you're South Carolina, and you're hiring a guy who, if he has any level of success, he has an automatic. How did Bear Bryant say it when they asked him why
Mama called.
Mama called. Papa's up there in Vicksburg, in Blacksburg. If Papa calls, and Justin Fuente is on, I don't think he's on a hot seat, but he's on that Jim Harbaugh close to the hot seat level. If like I say, if Shane Beamer has any level of success there, I'm not saying that he would be a 100% bet to go to Virginia Tech, but that's out there as compared to, say, like somebody like a Brian Harsin. Brian Harsin just left his alma mater to come to Auburn, so right. You don't got to worry about him having a dream job, so to speak, or whatever. But Shane, that's the only thing I don't. But just coaching wise, he's a sharp young coach. He's been around. That's what I always like to see with coaches that are the sons of other coaches, is that do you just sit around and learn from daddy, or do you actually get around the rest of the world and learn from some of these other coaches? And Shane Beamer, I think I want to say he's coached under Steve Spurrier. I know he's been out at Oklahoma under I think he was out under Oklahoma under both Bob Stoops and Lincoln Riley. I know for sure Bob Stoops. And he was at Georgia under Mark Richt, and I think he might have stayed. I think he might have been with Kirby Smart too. So, like I said, he's been around to some big time programs. He's seen how big time programs are run. Like I said, if he was just Joe Blow off the street and he didn't have any ties to a school that has in the pecking scheme of things, Virginia Tech is above South Carolina. With all due respect, Carolina. Yes,
absolutely.
So, like, you have a guy who has a clear destination that he could go to. So, like I said, if you just took his resume and he had no school that was higher than up in the pecking order that was like a clear destination for him, I would say that's a home run hire. And maybe he decides to follow in his father's footsteps and says, you know what, I'm gonna make South Carolina my home the same way that Frank Beamer made Virginia Tech his home. Maybe he does that, but that's the only drawback I see to that hire.
You mentioned Stoops. When Stoops is he going to ever get tired of retirement? I mean, he's only about 60, 61?
I hate that I know that they brought back another one. I don't know. I didn't really pay that much attention to it. I hate that football league that they were doing right before COVID hit.
Oh yeah,
didn't play out, because I really do think that was his kind of like his tryout for the NFL to see if he wanted to go to the NFL. I think he's done with college.
Okay.
But I do think he could go to the NFL.
Speaking of NFL, how many athletic directors have their waiting for this little experiment in Jacksonville to wash out. And, you got Urban Meyer. He's going to give you 5 years. You're going to get a national championship out of it. He's going to leave your program in disarray and turmoil, but you're going to get a national championship in those 5 years.
No, now he's in Ohio State. The jury is still out on Ohio State. That's apparent. That machine is still rolling. So maybe it's not all that bad. Let me ask you this: would that be the biggest betrayal in the world for him to go to Michigan?
Oh God! And he would do it in a minute. He would do it. That would be. But I thought that his eye has been, which I don't see it happening now with Notre Dame, but USC.
People say that, and it very well might, but he's a Midwestern guy, and I'm not. People talk about that. I don't know why. I get, because USC is one of the biggest jobs in the world, obviously, and like I said, I'm throwing out that Michigan thing just as a little,
That would be interesting.
Because he is a Midwestern guy, and I know that when, like I said, I know the Notre Dame thing, the Notre Dame connection is there, but I don't think that job's ever going to become available until Brian Kelly says that he's done. Although, if you're an NFL team, would you take a chance on Brian Kelly?
Has he done anything to really justify that, though?
Who?
Kelly.
You're asking me? I think we've had this conversation before. I think Brian Kelly is, if you're just talking about coaching, because I think we had this conversation. We said his problem at Notre Dame is he just can't get that game breaking talent. But if you're talking about just coaching, Brian Kelly is. I say Brian Kelly is top 5 in the country, and I'm really, and if you really push me to say so, I might argue that he's number 2.
Really?
Yeah, because like I said, Dabo runs a good program. He knows how to. Dabo is a program runner. Dabo is a Bobby Bowden. He is 100% that Bobby Bowden type. Brian Kelly can actually coach. Like Brian Kelly, if you put 2 teams of equal talent at every position, and you put Brian Kelly coaching one of them, Dabo Swinney coaching the other one, I'm taking Brian Kelly's team. Because he's got people. I mean, like I said, people look at what he does at Notre Dame, and I think they take for granted that he's not they don't realize that Brian Kelly is an offensive mastermind. You look at what he was doing at Cincinnati and Central Michigan back in the day. He was working wonders with that team. He is a sharp offensive mind. And like I said, he's passed it off a little bit to the coordinators now. But like I said, as a coach, I like Brian Kelly. I am 100% on Brian Kelly, and that's why I'm surprised his name never comes up in NFL circles, because if you put him with an NFL team with a general manager whose job is it to go out and get the talent, that takes care of the number one. It's like we had that conversation. That takes care of the number one problem that he's had at Notre Dame, is not having that game breaking talent.
Yeah, because that team last year was one player away.
Like I said, you don't have to. You're not in the NFL. You're not in a position where you have to convince somebody to come to South Bend. Think about it now. You got to come to some little small Catholic school in South Bend.
Yeah.
Like people think about the name of Notre Dame, and I think that they think that Notre Dame is Notre Dame. It's a Catholic school in South Bend, Indiana.
Yeah.
So, like I said, you think people love to hate on Notre Dame, but when you really boil it down to its essence, it's kind of amazing that Notre Dame is even able to have success in the modern world of college football.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, a Catholic school in a small town up there.
They talk about all the money that Notre Dame has, and that Notre Dame is able to pull in. Well, yeah, they need to get that money because, again, you're talking about a little Catholic school in South Bend, Indiana. That's
so I got a question for you. When, obviously they didn't let him play it out, but when are we going to have a school like a Texas or USC or one of those premier schools that go out and hire a black coach and they actually have 5 years to try to put something in place instead of being gone after 3? Because we really don't have that many. I mean, how many black coaches we have in college football right now?
I was just reading a story about it. I don't think anybody got hired this time. Nobody got hired new this hiring cycle. And we lost Kevin Sumlin got fired, or did Sumlin gone the year before? I forget which, but yeah, it's not a pretty number, and but I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure first of all, you have to look at a school like, again, the schools that we're talking about, Texas, USC. They're going to be quick trigger happy to begin with because that's just how those schools are.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we ever will.
I mean, because I don't even. I mean, I'm trying to think. I can't remember. I mean, we have none in the SEC, ACC. You got a lot.
And Dino Babers, and like I said, he's on the hot seat.
And yeah, I mean, you just Maryland. You've got. I mean, then in Big Ten, you got Loxley. I want to keep trying to say Lockley, or I don't know. So, what Big 12?
I don't think there's anybody in the Big 12. Right now, you have Herm Edwards in Arizona State for however long that lasts. And then you have got Carl Durrell at Colorado. And then you have, Big Ten, you got Mel Tucker.
Yeah, I forgot about him.
Colorado. Maybe Michigan State is Michigan State on that level that you were talking about, on that Texas USC level?
No, I don't think they're on that level, but that's still a pretty good sized program.
Okay, well, like I said, you got Tucker. I
forgot about him.
So, and I would say Michigan State from their program history, they seem to be the kind of program that gives you 5 or 6 years before you actually just flame out. But I mean, so that might be one. In Colorado, I mean, Colorado is Colorado even on the Michigan State level?
I don't think so. I mean, they did have that national championship, but I don't think they're on the Michigan. At least not now.
Okay, so I could see Carl Durrell getting maybe 3. I could see Carl Durrell getting 5 or 6 years there because again, Colorado is that kind of school that they'll give you some time. I was actually kind of surprised that they fired the guy. They fired the guy because Mel Tucker was the guy who was their last coach, but they fired the guy who Mel Tucker replaced because he actually had a good year the year before they fired him. And like I said, they fell off again, but I think they had a lot of injuries, but he had been there for like 5 or 6 years at that point. So, like I said, that I don't think a USC or a Texas level program is going to give you that much time.
No, it's got to be instant gratification today.
Yeah, and then you have to look at it again. This is part of the problem with those programs. Is a black coach going to get to that rock star level that those kind of programs are going to hire? Like I said, when Charlie Strong got hired at Texas, he had been talked about for years as, is anybody going to hire this guy? Anybody going to hire this guy? So do you have to have that factor going into it? And then he had just had about a 2 or 3 year run at Louisville that was off the charts with Teddy
Mhm.
Bridgewater. So, are you going to have a black head coach that's given that kind of that rises to that level? Considering that, like we said, there aren't too many black head coaches out there right now. Because, like I said, I don't think anybody got hired this last cycle at a major.
Strong, and like you said, how many years did he put in at South Carolina and Florida? And I think back at South Carolina as an assistant coach, and everybody's like, look at this guy, look at this guy, look at this guy, look at this guy. And finally somebody did hire him.
Not mistaken, I want to say that Texas almost got, because I remember, was Auburn, did Auburn have a vacant, was Malzahn hired at the same time, or was that after Malzahn?
When
Texas hired Strong.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was Malzahn was already at Auburn, because I think it was 2000. Yeah, I know it was, because it was 2013 when they hired Strong, because that's when they supposedly came at Saban and offered him 10 years, $100 million. And Saban actually said that.
The thing that I remember about that was that, like I said, Charlie Strong, for about 2 or 3 years, there was for about 2 or 3 years, I want to say Auburn was the last school that didn't hire him, that everybody kind of looked at them really suspect, like, why didn't you hire him? Or it might have been, I might be thinking about something. It might have been.
There was another guy from
I'm thinking about
Buffalo. Yeah, Turner Gill.
That was it. But Charlie Strong was kind of along in the same lines.
Yeah.
Where they were like, there was like a 2 or 3 year period where people were just like, why aren't you hiring this guy? And I want to say that by the time Texas hired him, it was kind of like a guilt trip type of deal to where somebody had to hire him at that point.
That level. I forgot about, of course, I was never crazy about this hire anyway. When Florida State hired Willie Taggart, I think he was just 6-6 at Oregon the year before when he got that job at Florida State.
Yeah, but Willie Taggart got hired at Florida State forget about Oregon. That was the place that he got hired from. Forget about Florida. Forget about Oregon. Willie Taggart got hired at Florida State based off of what he did at Southern Florida.
Yeah.
Western Kentucky. That's what he got hired off of. But it's another situation, because I want to say he got fired after about a year and a half.
He got fired halfway through his second season.
Yeah, and people didn't realize, and that's why I think Mike Norvell is in the same. Mike Norvell is going to have some growing pains, because Jimbo Fisher left that job for a reason.
Oh yeah, I know he did.
Matter of fact, Jimbo Fisher he was very open about the reason why. It wasn't just because, yes, Texas A&M giving him 75, however many millions of dollars that they gave him, helped. But that wasn't just the only reason why he left that job. He left that job because he was telling them.
Yeah, if they would have built facilities up,
the facilities and everything, and it was, and Willie Taggart came there, and you're not going to fix those problems in a year and a half.
No, when they're not putting the money behind it. He's all excited. Where'd you rather be, Texas A&M or Florida State?
All honesty, Texas A&M.
Really, you'd rather be Texas A&M or Florida State?
Huh?
You'd rather be Texas A&M or Florida State? With all things being equal, if you've got facilities at Florida State.
If all things are equal, I would still rather be at Texas A&M than Florida State.
Really?
Yes. I would rather be at. You got to think. If you're going to be the number 2, if you're going to be at a number 2 school, which it's still a number 2 school. If you're going to be at a number 2 school, where would you rather be at? You want to be the number 2 school in Texas or the number 2 school in Florida?
The Florida State's won 3 national championships in modern era.
Sure. I'm not gonna. They did it. How many? They did it because they had Bobby Bowden, and then they looked into Jimbo Fisher, and they took advantage of. I'm not saying, mind you, it's not a. I'm not saying there's like a big gulf between the two. I'm just saying, all things being equal, I would rather be at Texas A&M than Florida State. Now, mind you, when I say that, I would also say I would rather be at Florida State than just about any other number 2 school in the entire country. I mean, I would probably, I mean, maybe I'd rather be at UCLA just because California versus Florida. Maybe I'd rather be at Auburn just because Auburn people are probably going to buy in more than. But no, but that's still yeah, probably. I mean, Florida State. I mean, I'm not saying there's a big gulf between the two, but I would still rather be at. People talk about Texas A&M. Matter of fact, this is a great. The fact that we're even having this conversation about the fact that because you said Florida State's got 3 national championships. How many does Texas A&M have?
I think they 1940 or 41. I think they won one.
They have one. I want to say that they have one that's. They have one that the NCAA, because the NCAA has a list of selectors that they will officially recognize a title from if they stay the number 1 team. And I want to say Texas A&M has one from one of those officially recognized selectors, but it ain't like it ain't the AP and it ain't the coaches poll. You know what I'm saying?
I think it's from I think it's pre-World War II.
Yeah. So like I said, that's what just think about that. Florida State has 3, no doubt about it, national championships. Now, I think the first one there were some issues with should Florida have been there, or should it have been Notre Dame, or should Florida State have been there, or should it have been because of the way that the season played out. But they won it on the field, and they won it, no doubt about it. The last 2 were completely undisputed because they were the BCS in the play, and they were in the BCS. So you look at it, you got a team that's got 3 national championships. And like I said, we're having a legitimate conversation that's asking, would you rather be at this other school that, if we're going to be honest about it, has no real national championship?
That says a lot.
That says a lot about what the potential that you seriously have at Texas A&M.
But I've always said this, though. I mean, Texas A&M, they have everything in place. I mean, they've got rabid fan base, they've got money, great recruiting area, but it's always just seemed like a fool's errand for every coach that goes there. I mean, starting with Jackie Sherrill in the early '80s. I mean, he had the record contract then, like 5 years, $1.5 million. And it never turns out. I mean, R.C. Slocum, Mike Sherman.
I want to say I'm tempted to say we actually had this. We did
a few weeks ago, and now that I've said that,
all of those Texas schools, that none of them have been able to actually, because even if you take University of Texas, yes, University of Texas, if money ruled everything, Texas would win every national championship every year. But I want to say how many, because I know they have the Game of the Century championship where they beat Arkansas, or was that a tie, or whatever it was where they played Arkansas and went to the game or whatever.
Was that in six? Was that?
I want to say it was 68 or 69.
They won, because they won one in '69 and they didn't win another one until 2005.
Yeah, and I want to say, are those not their only 2 championships ever?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I don't think that they're on I don't, like I said, I know that there's a whole lot of, and like I said, the NCAA has an official list of that if you have a championship, if one of those selectors proclaimed you as their champion for that year, you are allowed to say, we are the official. That's why you can have like 4 or 5 different champions from a given year. But I want to say they only have those 2 that they are actually that they can actually claim, or that they actually have a legitimate claim to. Because I don't want to. I want to say their name doesn't come up at like say in like all the 40s and 50s and things. Because you got to think SMU and TCU and those kind of schools
That's
were doing
right.
it. Yeah. So like I said, between Texas and Texas A&M, you arguably have the two most powerful, richest Big Two schools of any state in the country, and they got 3 championships between them.
Yeah, you might be right. Since the 1937 or when it was in the AP 36, whenever the AP started, I think TCU won 3 in a row.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. TCU and TCU and SMU and Rice. I don't think
Ohio State had some, and yeah.
Rice was doing enough to fill a 70,000 seat stadium back then.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's 70,000 people back then. Dang, you're probably right. I'll have to look it up, but I don't think they have any more than that.
Yeah.
Two most richest schools with 3 championships. So let's go through the leagues now. I mean, ACC, who Clemson versus Miami for the championship.
I'm gonna say North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay, I'll go along with that. Yeah, I'll go along with that.
This year seems to be the year where we're discounting the value of the quarterback. North Carolina, arguably, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a Heisman Trophy finalist at the end of the year. Howell.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll go along with that. Yeah, North Carolina.
Now, in SEC, my heart wants to say Alabama, Florida, but my head is going to say Alabama, Georgia, and my head might just say Georgia might win that game.
Okay.
And I don't think it. I mean, can you ever go wrong saying Ohio State and Wisconsin in the Big Ten at this point?
No, I'll have to go along with that too.
And Pac-12, unless UCLA can do something, or Arizona State, probably going to be USC and Oregon again.
What, Texas, Oklahoma?
Well, they have that weird they have that weird thing where they do the round robin schedule and then it's the top 2 teams. So I'm going to say probably Iowa State and Oklahoma.
Iowa State and Oklahoma. Okay.
Because I actually, this is just, I could actually see something funky happening, like Texas beating Oklahoma and then losing 2 other games, and then Oklahoma, because they have that system, almost every year has something weird like that happen where, one team beats the other team and then they end up having a rematch in the championship game, or one team beats one team and then they lose another game here or there, so they don't have the rematch in the championship game. So, but I'm going to stick with the preseason prognostications and say Oklahoma and Iowa State.
Who do you think will be your 4 teams in the playoff?
I hate to say it. University of Georgia.
Okay.
Clemson.
Okay.
Ohio State. Oklahoma.
Who's your champion?
You just heard that sigh, right?
Yeah. George Kirby brings it home.
I'm gonna hate to see it. I would hate to see it, but I again, if not this year, when? If you don't do it this year, will you ever do it? And like I said, unless we're just totally undervaluing the value of a quarterback, I don't see why they're not maybe Clemson, but I'm going with Georgia. I mean, I like. It pains me to say it. I want to wash my mouth out with soap right now for having said it. But yeah, I think this is their year. But now let me ask you this: this is we actually have college football going on this week. Are any of the games tomorrow exciting to you?
No, not really.
Really?
Unless I missed one. From what I was saying, it was. I mean, I'll watch them, but I forgot how many games we had tomorrow.
It's you got Nebraska, Illinois, which I was about to say. I'm actually interested in seeing that one.
Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't even know that was playing. That shows me
Yeah.
right there. I've missed the schedule.
I'm actually interested in seeing that one just because I want to see if Nebraska, like I said, Scott Frost, he's probably a dead man walking because apparently these violations are pretty bad. But if there's some way that he could skate off of these violations to where he gets to actually coast through the season, he probably needs to have a 7 or 8 win season. So Illinois is that kind of a team to where if you can beat them up and you can beat them, you can have a good showing against that Illinois team, who I'm actually interested in seeing also because Brett Bielema's first game there. So that's a sneaky interesting game.
Okay, Hawaii and UCLA play tomorrow night as well, or tomorrow as well. See, the only thing I didn't even know this was playing.
Yeah,
that shows you.
I'm actually interested in watching that game too because UCLA with Chip Kelly, can he actually put it together this year?
Yeah, I didn't know you. Yeah, I had no idea. I don't think ones I seen I seen the UTEP and New Mexico State, and I knew UConn and Fresno State was playing. Which I mean, I was planning on watching them, but I didn't even know these other games were on.
Yeah, those are. I mean, I'll probably if they're on TV. I want to say all but one of them is on TV or accessible TV. I'll probably end up watching all of them just because it's college football and that's what we do. We watch college football. But yeah, Nebraska, Illinois, and the UCLA game. Those were the two that stood out to me as being ones that I actually want to see.
Well, I should have known that there was going to be something in what they call week 0. I remember a couple years ago when Miami and Florida played. The week before,
scheduled to play week 0, but because of there was a hurricane that week, that game actually got pushed back to where it was just a regular season game.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot about. Yeah, that's right. The hurricane messed that game up. Yeah, I forgot all about that.
It was something to do with a hurricane to where that maybe they wanted to push it up to that week 0 because they knew that it was something to it to where. But I do remember they wanted to have that game that week, but either they couldn't do it because of a hurricane or they were wanting to do it because they were worried that a hurricane might get. It was some, but it didn't get played that week. That much I remember. I want to say that might have been 2019. I want to say that might have been our last normal season.
What? 2019. It was. I remember that because friend's birthday was that day, and nobody grilled out steaks. Then, but you're right. They got pushed up because of that hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's okay. So I was looking at these live stream apps. I'm still got to get the bugs worked out of that because I don't know what I'm doing with it. I need a 9-year-old kid to come in here and show me how to do all this stuff. Because I tech savvy, I am not. I can barely turn on the direct TV.
Yeah. But now, I think, do you have I think you. How do you do the Facebook Live thing?
Yeah, I didn't think about that. We could do Facebook Live and go straight in with that. Yeah, that's right. Because you can go straight Facebook Live and then bring somebody on. Because I haven't did that. I haven't used that in a while.
But the only thing I don't know is that can you actually record that?
Yes, you can record that. That's how I used to do them in a buddy, because it will allow you to save the video on there. Because the live stream, I think it's doing is bringing. I think the live stream is doing is basically just going straight to Facebook Live anyway.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we'll probably have to look into something like that for the upcoming shows. But it's good as always. It was good talking to you.
Yeah, man. Good talking to you too, and we'll do this. I'll look forward when it starts next week, and other than that, that's yeah, it'll be fun, man.
Yep, it's kind of surprised. It's kind of funny. I'm glad that we had this little week 0 because otherwise, college football college football and the NFL just kind of snuck up on me.
Yeah, I mean, it did me because I'm so used to that. They started off with that Thursday night game. Used to be like a South Carolina, Texas A&M, South Carolina, East Carolina. Somebody.
When I was looking at the week 0 games, I was thinking, well, why isn't there a Thursday night game? I was actually confusing it for week 1 because usually the week 0 they only have like 1 or 2 games, but they've actually got a full. Because I was looking at it yesterday, you can legitimately watch college football all day long tomorrow up until like the normal 7 o'clock. The 7 o'clock window. So,
they don't have 7.
12. Yep, Fox has Nebraska, Illinois at 1, and then UCLA, Hawaii's at 3:30, and then they have a late night game that's at San Jose State and Southern Utah. Yeah, so the only thing we're missing is like that 7 o'clock window.
Huh.
I was thinking.
I didn't know that. I hate that. For years, I don't know why. For years there, I don't know why South Carolina got that Thursday night spot to kick off.
You know why? Because
I don't.
They aren't Georgia. They aren't Florida. They aren't Alabama. They aren't Auburn. They aren't Tennessee. They were South Carolina. So those. Have you ever noticed that the SEC doesn't play? You notice that every other conference plays a lot of those Thursday night games. SEC don't play that many of them once the season gets going.
That's true.
And you notice the only school that ever got forced into that, because remember, it was Texas A&M. Yeah, Texas A&M was in the SEC at that point. But you see, the only 2 schools that got forced into that game were the last 2 in the conference. The South Carolina and Texas A&M.
And that Thursday night game, they drilled South Carolina.
And everybody came out of there thinking, oh, yeah, they're going to be – remember, that was Kenny Trill. Kenny Trill was supposed to win the Heisman that year. And then he didn't even finish the season as a starting quarterback, if I remember right.
Well, that's because so many people had South Carolina picked to win the conference.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I mean, that all that happened. God, I think South Carolina was number 4 coming in that season.
I wonder they were pretty high because was Clowney still there that year?
No, because Spurrier. I'll send you the clip of his press conference after that game because he was just. I mean, it was classic. I mean, Spurrier was in there talking about South Carolina, and he said, he said we got one player that was preseason, 3rd team All SEC, and everybody's predicting us to win the conference.
Yeah,
said something.
This is because this tells you about kind of how I am. I remember. I want to say that was 2014, 2013.
It was, yes, 2014.
last year that they had the NCAA video game, the NCAA football video game. And when I dynasty mode, this is like I said, this is how weird I am. I would try to replicate the real world results so that the season played out other than the team that I was playing with. The season would play out kind of like the real season would play out. It was the hardest thing ever to get Texas A&M to beat South Carolina. You would think that
Really?
wouldn't you would think because you would think that wouldn't have been a hard thing to sim, but I think I actually had to go in there and actually play that game out in order to have Texas A&M beat South Carolina. They were
I thought you'd be
what it
able to
was.
simulate
They were
that.
active. Huh?
Yeah, I thought you could. That would have been that hard to simulate.
No. Like I said, it was actually easier to simulate. You know, some of those MAC games where a MAC team will beat like Kansas or Northwestern, you know, something like that. It was actually easier to sim some of those games than it was to get that Texas A&M South Carolina game.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't explain it, but that's how it was.
Furrier says that Prescott. He goes. He said, "Yeah, I've been reading like y'all have hearing so much about our 3-4 defense. Anybody like that 3-4 defense?" He said, "I don't remember if it mattered if we'd had 12 out there."
Yeah, like I said, because it was understandable because he was out there. He was balling. He was balling, and everybody was like, "Oh yeah, this is the next Johnny man. He's gonna be the next big deal, and all this and all that." And it was just like, nope, he was not.
That year, I would have to go back and look at how many they lost, but South Carolina was only. I mean, they had lost so many leads that year. I remember they lost a 20-7 lead against Missouri. I think they finished 7-6.
No, did they finish 7? Or yeah, it was the next year where they actually just
Spurrier, yeah, he resigned at like they were like 1-4, 2-4 or something. He stepped down.
Yeah, they finished 7-6.
They lost the lead to Kentucky. They lost the lead to Missouri. Now, you know, of course, they got blown out by A&M, and then that Auburn game. That game is when he threw everything he had at Auburn. He didn't punt in that game.
Yeah,
He ran.
Other than that Texas A&M game and Clemson, they were actually in. It's like you said, the Missouri was a 1-point loss, Kentucky was a 7-point loss, Auburn was a 7-point loss, and Tennessee they lost in overtime by 3 on a field goal.
And that Auburn game was when they did not punt. He had a fake field goal, a fake punt. They tried an onside kick at the start of the second half and got it. I think he wanted. He was 0-7 against Auburn at South Carolina. He wanted to beat Auburn so bad.
Oh well, you know that also probably goes back to those Florida days.
Yeah, yes, when they beat him down there in the swamp.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, you know, I'm sitting here looking at this team, and I don't see any reason why this is a. Yeah, they were preseason number 9.
Number 9, okay.
Yeah, this is not a. But I do think that they were picked to finish to win the East.
Oh, and a lot of people had them as the sleeper to win the conference.
Yeah, like I said, I'm sitting here looking at it. I don't see why. I'm sitting here looking at this team. I mean, you had Mike Davis was a pretty good running back. None of these receivers are jumping out to me. I remember Pharaoh Cooper's name.
Yeah, Pharaoh was about the best. Well, it was not. I don't know why they had him right up there so high.
Yeah, and I'm looking at. I mean, Corey Robinson. I remember him as an offensive lineman. I remember hearing a lot about him. But this defense, I'm looking at this defense. Just tells you. I'm on Wikipedia. So you know Wikipedia. If they have a bio, you can click there in blue. Their defense literally has no blue names. So it tells you their defense after they went to South Carolina, they didn't do anything else.
No, so I'm trying to remember their oh God, the defense coordinator's name, because he took so much heat that year. But I mean, to me, it was amazing that they got as many stops as they did because he had nobody on that. He didn't have any players.
Lorenzo Ward,
Coach Ward, that's it.
His name is not in blue. Although I want that's got to be a somebody. Yeah, okay. So they just don't have him linked on here. I was about to say his name isn't in blue either. Yeah, he's at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga right now.
Is he a coordinator or head coach?
He's a coordinator.
Okay.
Yeah, that's South Carolina, because that South Carolina run was his high point as a defensive as a coach, because he went to Fresno State the next year. Or no, he went to Fresno State in 2016, Louisville in 2017 under Dum Dum, Bobby Petrino, and then he went to University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. Yep.
How many years was he at? South Carolina?
He was there for 6 years, but you remember, I want to say for most of that time, he was because we were talking Charlie Strong. Wasn't he there before he went to Louisville?
He was there on 2 different occasions. He was there, I think, up under Holtz, and then I think he came back up under Spurrier the second time. I think he went from there to Florida, and then was back at South Carolina at some point.
Okay. Yep, he was that is indeed the case. Okay, so he was at Florida at that time. No, he was already at Louisville at that time. I want to think they had a co-court. I don't think this guy is Strong. This guy Lorenzo Ward. I don't think he was there. I don't think he had full control of the defense his entire time that he was there. And he's listed as the defensive coordinator for that whole time, but I don't think he was actually the defensive coordinator that whole time.
Yeah, I don't think he did either. Was either. When he was there, I just have to go back and look. I don't remember. I think you're right. Yeah, Strong was there.
Yeah, because Ellis Johnson was there for a good period of time.
That's right. I forgot about Ellis being there. I forgot all about that.
Yep. Yeah, they were. Okay, so Ellis Johnson wasn't officially the defensive coordinator. He was the assistant head coach and defenses. So I guess this Ward guy, they gave him the title, but Ellis Johnson was actually running the defense. That's what the deal was with that. And it's not until Ellis Johnson leaves because even after Ellis Johnson leaves, they still got a co-coordinator there.
I never understood the co-coordinator thing. I mean,
I
never understood the co-coordinator thing. I mean, somebody's got to be in charge. You don't have co-head coaches. I never understood we're co-coordinators.
I don't either, but a lot of the teams that do it, they seem to work. Like I said, I don't get it.
Back when
it works good if you have one that's going to be specifically the play caller, and then the other guy just handles like it's because a lot of these, like what we saw with the Ellis Johnson thing, it's just a position. It's not actually saying, I have all this responsibility compared to what this other guy might have. I guess it just matters who's calling the plays.
Well, back when DeBose was at Alabama, they had some kind of weird thing going where Neil Callaway was the offensive line coach and the offensive coordinator.
Charlie Stubbs. They did that at Georgia too.
Yeah, Charlie Stubbs was the quarterback's coach and the play caller, and that thing was a disaster.
just like it was at Georgia. That was University of Georgia. Callaway was the offensive coordinator. Mike Bobo was the quarterback's coach up until and if I'm not mistaken, Martin Rick was calling plays. Martin Rick was the play caller up until Neil Callaway got hired to go to UAB, which I'm sure you know the whole crazy story about that, about how Callaway got that job.
Oh yeah, I'm I'm all too well.
Yeah, because you know who was supposed to have gotten that job at that time?
I forgot, who was it?
Jimbo.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes, you're exactly right on that. I forgot all about that. He was supposed to get that job.
He was supposed to get that job, and then Bear Bryant Jr. Did they call him Bear Bryant? I know it's he was a junior, but did they call him Bear Jr. or was it Bob?
I just always heard him called as Paul Bryant Jr.
Okay, so Paul Bryant, because they didn't want Alabama, and this shows how crazy this whole thing was. The idea that UAB could maybe overshadow Alabama, but they didn't want UAB to have a better head coach than what the University of Alabama might have gotten.
Yeah, they don't want UAB to do anything.
Yep. So they didn't hire. It was all set for Jimbo to get that job, and they said no. They would not approve it.
I forgot all about that.
And they ended up hiring Neil Callaway.
You know, I'm surprised that now think about that, they let UAB hire Mike Davis that time.
Basketball is okay. Remember, UAB actually has a history, and UAB has a pretty decent history in basketball. And you know, Alabama. I mean, even though Alabama has a decent history in basketball, those Alabama folks don't care about getting upstage in basketball.
I don't know, that loss to UAB hurt really bad in the 80s.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure it did, but they would if that was in football, it would have been a totally different situation.
Oh God, if that's been I can't even imagine what it'd be like.
Yeah, like I said, they totally put the kibosh on that. And then plus, Mike Davis has a good rep, and Mike Davis is a good head coach, but he's not Jimbo in, what was it, 2005, 2006, 2007, that time frame. He wasn't at Jimbo. Matter of fact, Mike Davis he had just gotten fired from Indiana, so they weren't too worried about that one. But yep, like I said, it's good talking to you.
All right, man. I just sent you a message where you said you couldn't talk long today, and we'll talk again later in the week, and or message you, we'll get ready for next week. And I had fun with that, and I'll